The cabin hums with the quiet rhythm of descent, that steady lull between relief and arrival. Seatbelt signs glow, flight attendants brace, and passengers tilt their faces toward the window light, waiting for the ground to rise beneath them. Then, without warning, the hum falters. The altimeter needle spins like a compass gone mad, whirling between sea level and sky. Captain Lucas Meyer grips the yoke, his calm face cracking for the first time in 15 years of flying. Beside him, First Officer Clara Novak scans her instruments, her lips whispering altitude numbers that make no sense. 6 minutes to Zurich, or maybe forever. The cabin lights flicker. The floor tilts. Someone gasps. Outside, the stars stretch, twist, vanish. And then, silence. What happens when every machine you trust suddenly lies? Panic has no sound in thin air, only breathing, metal, and the low moan of pressure. Lucas tries to steady the aircraft, but gravity itself feels wrong. Clara reaches for the backup altimeter. It shows sea level. The ground should be beneath them, yet the view outside is pure sky. In the cabin, passengers pray, cry, or sit frozen, trapped between altitude readings that cannot exist. Jonas Keller's voice cracks through static on the radio. Flight 217. You are not on radar. Lucas presses transmit. Nothing. The silence swallows his reply. Cabin lights pulse in and out of existence. Elena's recording blinks with static. As the image twists, passengers seem to warp in the lens, like light bending through water. Mira Hansen yells over the roar. We're not descending. No one answers. Outside, faint streaks of white curl around the wings, flowing backward, upward. Time feels detached, seconds repeating. Then, a voice on the intercom. Lucas's, calm, steady. Ladies and gentlemen, please remain seated. But beneath his calm, his breathing cracks. In Zurich Tower, Jonas Keller leans over the console, replaying radar data frame by frame. The blip reappears 10,000 feet above the last reading. He checks coordinates twice. Impossible. He wipes fog from the window, scanning the sky where the plane should appear. Nothing. He looks back at the screen. The blip climbs again, vanishes, then reappears miles east, as if the aircraft is folding through space itself. He whispers, "How are you climbing?" The aircraft steadies suddenly, unnaturally. The turbulence stops. Everyone exhales, believing it's over. Lucas leans back, scanning his instruments. All readings normal. Altitude, 4,000 feet. Approach vector aligned. But something's wrong. Outside, there's no sign of land, no airport lights, no stars. Just an endless gray void stretching in every direction. The cockpit grows quieter than silence. Clara whispers, "Where are we?" Lucas doesn't answer. The altimeter blinks once, then resets to 0 again. The radio crackles once, then dies. Lucas and Clara sit in a vacuum of sound. The engines hum, but nothing feels mechanical anymore. It's like the air itself is holding its breath. Clara tries the emergency frequency. Static. She glances at Lucas, who's now staring into the mist beyond the cockpit. It isn't fog. It's too uniform, too alive. In the cabin, passengers whisper, sensing the shift. Phones lose signal. The light from the windows fades until it's the color of old paper. For the first time in her career, Clara removes her headset. The silence feels louder than any storm. Passengers begin to feel the eerie calm settle like a weight. Elena lowers her camera and looks around. No crying, no yelling, only confusion. The engines hum at a steady pitch that feels rehearsed. Mira stares through the window, but there's nothing to see, just a flat horizon of white. A man in a suit checks his watch and laughs nervously. The flight attendants whisper to each other near the galley, their smiles trembling. Somewhere above them, a soft metallic knock echoes once, then again. Jonas Keller leans toward his screen, listening to the static on the open channel. He hears faint breathing, maybe voices, but no words. Behind him, another controller shakes his head. There's nothing. Yet Jonas swears he can feel it, the rhythm of someone still transmitting. He increases the gain. The static bursts into a shrill hiss that forces him to pull off his headset. For a second, buried in the noise, he hears Clara's voice whispering coordinates that don't exist on any map. Back inside the cockpit, Clara scribbles numbers on her notepad, whispering altitudes that make no physical sense. -100 feet, she says, her voice hollow. Lucas doesn't respond. He's watching something in the mist. A faint shadow moves parallel to them, the shape of another aircraft, impossibly close, yet perfectly silent. It keeps pace beside them, unlit, unmarked. Clara stares, her voice trembling. That can't be another plane. Lucas answers quietly. Then what is it? Elena raises her camera again, hands trembling. She zooms in on the wing. There's frost forming across the metal, spreading like veins of glass. Then, in a single frame, something flashes. Not lightning, but a pattern of light, geometric, deliberate. Mira grabs Elena's wrist and whispers, "Don't film that." The frost thickens. The lights flicker off. And for an instant, everyone in the cabin sees their own reflections staring back from the windows. But none of them are moving. When the search team recovers the black box, the casing looks untouched. It was found days after the crash, resting atop snow that hadn't melted. Investigators crowd around a long metal table in Zurich's cold examination room. The moment they power it on, the playback emits a static hum, like breath between frequencies. For the first 12 minutes, all seems routine. Checklist calls, clear sky, calm voices. Then the altimeter readings erupt into chaos, looping figures faster than a human could read. Clara's voice breaks the rhythm. "Captain, we're inverted." Lucas's voice answers, quiet and steady. "No, we're not." The silence that follows feels conscious, as if the box itself is listening. Analysts slow the playback to half speed. A low hum repeats in the background. Constant, steady, unrecognizable. They isolate the frequency. It's not engine noise, not wind, not electrical feedback. It sits precisely between two radio bands, untransmittable by standard systems. A young technician leans close, replaying a fragment where the sound swells. It pulses once every second, like a heartbeat. When amplified, it almost sounds like someone breathing just behind the microphone. Why? The black box reveals the last 6 minutes. Lucas's breathing becomes erratic, but his voice remains composed. Clara repeats altitudes that climb and drop, like a heartbeat out of rhythm. Then, a sound like distant thunder, yet meteorologists confirm there were no storms within 200 miles. At minute 4, a third voice joins. It's soft, layered under static, speaking in a language no one recognizes. Investigators replay it dozens of times, trying to isolate syllables. It always ends with the same haunting distortion, like someone whispering, "Down," followed by the hiss of silence. Jonas Keller listens to the black box recording privately that night. The hum seeps into his office like a living thing. He writes down the coordinates he hears whispered by Clara, though he knows they don't exist. He types them into his radar system out of curiosity. To his shock, a faint blip appears, not in Zurich, but deep over the Alps, directly above where the signal vanished. Then it fades. He leans back, trembling, whispering into the darkness, "Who are you transmitting to?" The official report concludes, "Instrument malfunction under unknown electromagnetic interference." But the engineers who handled the black box know that's not true. Late at night, one returns to the lab, unable to let it go. He replays the final 30 seconds at quarter speed. Between the static and the rising alarm tone, a single human breath cuts through, then another, overlapping, until it sounds like a crowd inhaling at once. The hum fades, and a voice, faint, almost pleading, says, "We never descended." When investigators finally retrieve Elena Fisher's camera from the wreckage, its lens is cracked, but the memory card is intact. What they find changes the entire course of the inquiry. The footage begins normally. Elena filming the Alps beneath soft clouds, her cheerful voice narrating the descent. Then, as the altimeter goes wild, her voice fades to silence, replaced by a low hum that distorts the image. Faces of passengers flicker between frames as if the camera is catching time skipping. The final 6 minutes contain no sound, yet the movement of their mouths suggests conversation. Experts slow it frame by frame until something impossible appears reflected in the window. An aircraft flying parallel to theirs, identical in every detail. The footage's metadata reveals missing seconds, exact, clean intervals, as if erased deliberately. Experts from Zurich University analyze frame anomalies, microsecond fragments of static showing geometric flashes like circuits folding. One engineer notes that these bursts resemble pulse signatures, not compression errors. When enhanced, the image shows patterns aligning perfectly with the aircraft's altitude changes. It's as if the plane's descent was being rewritten in real time, its flight path adjusting to something unseen. A separate camera view captures something none of them can explain. For a brief instant, the cabin is bathed in bright white light. Every passenger freezes mid-motion, suspended between frames like mannequins. Elena's camera keeps rolling, unaffected. Her reflection in the window moves, but her body doesn't. It looks straight into the lens, smiling faintly before the image cuts to black. Investigators replay it again and again, but the movement is unmistakable. The reflection moves independently, aware of being seen. Jonas Keller reviews the footage privately in the tower's archive room. His hand trembles as he pauses on the reflection of the second aircraft. It's identical in every detail. Same call sign, same registration number, even the same flickering cabin lights. He enlarges the timestamp overlay. It reads 6 minutes ahead of real time. The reflection wasn't following, it was leading. Jonas sits back, staring into the frozen frame, whispering to himself. She filmed their own arrival. When the footage leaks online, it spreads within hours. Pilots across Europe recognize the impossible. Twin shadows matching altitude and heading within 1 meter. Aviation agencies issue statements calling it data error, optical distortion, coincidence. But the raw footage tells another story, one of perfect symmetry. Frame by frame, the second aircraft seems to dissolve into streaks of light, merging with the first. The final still shows Elena's camera dropping, the cabin returning to normal. Yet her reflection remains, lips parted, whispering something the microphone never caught. 3 days after the radar vanished, search teams combed the Swiss Alps under heavy snow. The wreckage lies scattered across 2 separate valleys, debris too far apart to belong to a single descent. Investigators find sections of fuselage perfectly intact, as if gently placed there. The engines bear no burn marks, no impact dents, only thin frost layered like glass. In one piece of cabin flooring, the paint looks melted and reformed. A swirl of color that shouldn't exist in nature. The data confirms an impossible truth. Both debris fields share identical serial numbers. The same parts, duplicated, the same plane, twice. Helicopters trace thermal signatures but find none. No bodies, no heat, no trace of fire. The wind carries only the mechanical whine of engines fading against the cliffs. When they replay drone footage, a strange phenomenon appears. The snow beneath certain debris pieces glows faintly in infrared, as if radiating residual heat. But the readings are colder than their surroundings. A contradiction. As one pilot says quietly over the comm, It's like the ground remembers something that didn't happen. Inside the operations tent, maps line the walls, connecting coordinates with red string. Jonas Keller stands over them, tracing his finger along a flight path that splits midway, one continuing east, one descending west. Both routes end with the same timestamp. The flight data recorders from each site match perfectly, down to the final second. The air grows still as the analysts realize they're not dealing with two planes, but one existing in two places simultaneously. Jonas whispers, "We've been searching for something that already landed." At dusk, a mountaineer spots something glinting in the snow. A silver bracelet engraved with the initials ED. Beside it, half buried in ice, lies Elena's camera battery. The footage inside shows nothing new, only the faint hum still recorded after the plane disappeared. When replayed outdoors, the wind seems to move in rhythm with the sound, whistling higher with every pulse. The mountaineer removes his gloves, presses his ear to the snow, and swears he can hear the hum coming from beneath. By nightfall, the mountains fall silent again. The search teams pack up, leaving markers across the Twin Valleys. From above, the layout of debris glows in the moonlight, forming a pattern, a spiral that mirrors the shape of an altimeter dial. In the center of it, the cockpit section rests perfectly aligned to the north, both halves symmetrical, as if arranged deliberately. Jonas watches the aerial feed from the helicopter window, whispering, "Someone placed it like that." Then, faintly, through the radio static, Clara's voice breaks in once more. "Altitude 0. Weeks later, deep inside Zurich's Aviation Acoustic Analysis Center, technicians feed the black box raw data into sound mapping software. At first, the waveform looks like noise. Dense, irregular, meaningless. But as one analyst overlays the file against a digital spectrogram of radio frequencies recorded that same night, a strange alignment appears. The hum from Flight 217 repeats every 6 seconds in a perfect pattern identical to the radar pulses that tracked its last known position. When the pitch is slowed, it forms a tone, steady, mechanical, deliberate. They aren't just hearing interference. Someone, or something, was transmitting through the plane itself. Jonas Keller is called in to review the findings. The engineers play the isolated tone through the lab's surround speakers. It's deep, metallic, and low, like the inside of a turbine turning underwater. As it resonates, the fluorescent lights flicker above them. The technician lowers the volume, but the sound continues faintly, even after the speakers are switched off. Jonas stares at the waveform on the monitor. It's not random. It's forming coordinates. The same coordinates Clara whispered from the cockpit. He murmurs, almost afraid to speak. "It's responding to us." They test the transmission at the original flight's frequency. The hum reacts instantly. The tone shifts upward, echoing like an answer. The speakers vibrate, instruments rattle on shelves, and a faint electrical smell fills the room. An intern records the oscillation, comparing it to seismic data from the night of the crash. The two waveforms match exactly. For the first time, they confirm the unthinkable. The plane's disappearance emitted not an error signal, but a pulse strong enough to disturb ground sensors. Whatever happened to Flight 217 reached into the Earth itself. Late that night, Jonas replays the frequency alone. Through the tone, a pattern begins to emerge. Faint Morse-like pulses layered within the hum. He decodes them by hand, marking short and long beats on a pad of paper. The message is short, almost childlike. "Do not descend." He freezes, eyes widening as the monitor flickers. For an instant, the spectrogram shifts shape, forming what looks like the outline of an aircraft climbing to endless white. Jonas whispers into the quiet, "They never fell. They rose." The next morning, the lab is sealed off. Officials claim a system malfunction, but the engineers who heard the tone can't shake it from their minds. They still hear it in traffic noise, in elevators, in the hum of electrical wires. Jonas sits in his car outside the facility, the radio tuned to stat. For a few moments, the tone returns, steady and familiar, pulsing like a heartbeat. He turns up the volume and listens. Between pulses, a woman's voice murmurs faintly. Clara Novak's, repeating a single line. Altitude 0. Do you copy? The transmission ends abruptly, leaving Jonas staring at the dashboard, the silence humming inside his chest. Months pass. The world moves on. Zurich Tower files the incident as equipment malfunction. The passengers' families receive carefully worded condolences. Yet, among the investigators, the unease never fades. Jonas Keller can't sleep. Each night the hum returns, faint at first, then building until it vibrates through the walls. He listens closely, realizing it follows a rhythm. 6 beats, then silence. One evening, unable to resist, he maps those intervals onto flight coordinates. They trace a perfect loop, the same path Flight 217 should have taken before landing, the same descent pattern. But when he plots the final point, it sits directly above the Alps at an altitude no aircraft could reach. Investigators reopen the case quietly after a new anomaly emerges. Another plane crossing the same airspace reports distorted altimeter readings at the exact coordinates Jonas mapped. The pilot describes a sudden flash of white light and an echoing hum reverberating through the cabin. He lands safely, but swears that for a few seconds, every passenger's reflection vanished from the windows. Zurich authorities dismiss it as electrical interference. Jonas, watching the flight data replay, sees the same pattern appear. Altitude 0. The signal lives on. A private report leaks. Inside it, data from multiple European radar stations shows a faint echo resembling Flight 217, appearing every 40 days over the same coordinates. No transponder, no identification, only a ghost signature. In one instance, the echo descends briefly to 4,000 feet before vanishing again. The signal emits a frequency matching the original hum from the black box. The world debates. Some call it an atmospheric mirage. Others say it's interference. Jonas knows better. He's seen the pattern before, in the wreckage spiral, in the Lena's footage, in the heartbeat of the tone. It's not random. It's repetition. Jonas returns to the Alps. The valley where the wreckage was found lies silent under a pale winter sun. The spiral of debris is gone now, snow burying every trace. But as he stands in the center, his handheld radio crackles. Static fills the air, rising and falling in rhythm. He adjusts the dial, and amid the noise, a familiar voice emerges. Faint, mechanical, yet unmistakably human. It's Captain Lucas Meyer. The words are broken, distorted by time, but they carry meaning. Still descending. No ground. Clara, are you reading? Jonas lowers the radio slowly, eyes wide, his breath freezing in the air. Night falls. The wind picks up, carrying a deep, slow rhythm that feels alive. Jonas gazes upward, through the clouds. Faint lights shimmer, like aircraft beacons, lost in fog. He raises his radio again. The signal grows louder, layered with breathing, with whispers. Then, one clear voice. Clara Novak's. Calm. Resolute. Altitude 0, the signal cuts. Jonas looks to the sky, realizing the impossible truth. The flight never crashed. It never landed. It's still up there, somewhere between altitude 0 and forever. The hum fades into the cold night, leaving only silence and a question that will never die.